Good evening and welcome to CYC News for the 30th of October 2016 and the 20th of Baba 17:33 a.m. I'm Angie Victor. In today's headlines, battle in Mosul. ISIS executes hundreds of Mosul area residents. Turkish airstrikes hit Kurdish fighters in Syria. Obamacare woes to linger long after Obama is gone. Calais Jungle demolition of massive migrant camp begins. European Space Agency confirms Mars lander lost during descent. HIV Patient Zero cleared by science. To our top story in Mosul, Iraq, where Islamic State fighters have taken tens of thousands of men, women, and children hostage in the city of Mosul and have executed at least 284 people last Wednesday, according to the UN. With Kurdish and Iraqi forces rapidly closing in on the city, ISIS has shipped civilians from areas around Mosul into strategic areas. They are now being held as human shields, the UN's Human Rights Office said last Friday. The militant group carried out a mass killing of people who refused to obey its orders, the UN added. Those executed included 190 former Iraqi security forces and 40 civilians, according to Ravina Shamdasani, a UN human rights spokeswoman. Many of them who refused to comply were shot on the spot, she said, citing reports corroborated by the UN that were by no means comprehensive but indicative of violations. ISIS has been forcing tens of thousands of people from their homes in some districts around Mosul, Shamdasani said. The Islamic State used a bulldozer to dump the corpses in a mass grave at the scene of the executions, Mosul's defunct College of Agriculture in the north of the city, the intelligence source said. The United Nations earlier said it is gravely worried that ISIS has taken 550 families from villages around Mosul and is using them as human shields as Iraqi and Kurdish forces battle the terror group for control of Iraq's second largest city. According to Ravina Shamdasani, 200 families from Somalia village and 350 families from Naj Afia were forced out and taken to Mosul in what appears to be an apparent policy by ISIS to prevent civilians escaping. Meanwhile, ISIS militants attacked security buildings in Kirkuk, 175 kilometers southeast of Mosul. Turkey says its warplanes have bombed Kurdish fighters in northern Syria, marking what may be the biggest single attack by Turkish forces against US-allied Kurds in that war-torn country since the Turkish military launched an incursion into Syria 2 months ago. Kurdish militia representatives said that the bombings happened last Wednesday night against Kurdish fighters advancing against ISIS militants near Afrin, a city about 40 kilometers northwest of Aleppo. There was conflicting information on the number of dead. Turkey said its attacks killed 160 to 200 Kurdish fighters. However, a predominantly Kurdish political party in Turkey, the HDP, said 14 people, including 4 civilians, were killed. The Turkish military also reported a cross-border exchange of fire early Thursday, saying 5 mortars from Afrin landed in the Turkish province of Hatay. Turkey said it responded with howitzer rounds and no casualties were reported. The airstrikes are a new chapter in Turkey's complicated involvement in neighboring Syria, where the Islamic terror group ISIS, Syrian rebels, and other factions have fought in a civil war of more than 5 years. And it comes as the Syrian regime forces and their Russian allies begin a humanitarian pause in Aleppo after weeks of bombardments against rebels there. Over to the United States. President Barack Obama leaves the White House in 12 weeks, but the law that bears his name will polarize politics long after he's gone. Big price hikes to Affordable Care Act premiums announced this week mean that Obama's proudest legislative achievement will fail to resolve the decades-old controversy surrounding the government's role in managing the cost of and access to health care. It will fall to the next administration whether to trash the system and start again or fix Obamacare's shortcomings, including rising premiums and deductibles, slowing enrollment growth, and the increasing number of insurers pulling out of the ACA marketplaces. Neither Hillary Clinton nor Donald Trump have laid out a detailed plan for how they would revise or replace the law, or how they would navigate the toxic politics that surface in Washington whenever healthcare is on the agenda. A team of workers in France began the long-awaited demolition of the Jungle migrant camp last Tuesday, pulling down tents, shacks, and other makeshift shelters that thousands have called home over the past 2 years. CNN journalists saw a team of cleaners, as French officials call them, in orange jumpsuits and hard hats, tearing down the temporary structures and disposing of migrants' possessions, dropping mattresses, pillows, and blankets into a dumpster with an excavator. Workers were scheduled to move in at 8 a.m. local time, but Calais officials delayed the operation until the afternoon to have a security cordon placed around the camp. More than 3,100 migrants have been bussed out of the jungle since authorities began a sweep on Monday, sending them to regions around the country to begin a months-long resettlement process. Among them were more than 500 children. The jungle has become a gritty symbol of Europe's migrant crisis and has been a thorn in the French government's side. But to a tight-knit community there, it is also a symbol of determination and resilience. More than 70 businesses have sprung up in the jungle, including restaurants, cafes, bars, hairdressers, and barbers. But leaving is not as simple as packing up and moving on. The European Space Agency, ESA, has confirmed the Schiaparelli spacecraft, which was expected to land on Mars on Wednesday, has been lost. During a press conference last Thursday, scientists said that Schiaparelli stopped transmitting around 50 seconds before the expected landing. The agency suspects something went wrong when the parachute was abandoned. A statement read, "The ejection itself appears to have occurred earlier than expected, but analysis is not yet complete." ESA's Director General, Jan Warner, said Schiaparelli's primary role was to test whether they could successfully land a probe on Mars. Warner said that recording the data during the descent was part of that, and it is important we can learn what happened in order to prepare for the future. David Parker, ESA's Director of Human Spaceflight and Robotic Exploration, said, "It's what they wanted from a test. We have data coming back that allows us to fully understand the steps that did occur and why the soft landing did not occur," he said. The probe was equipped with 9 thrusters that were due to be activated for the last 30 seconds to help cushion the landing. But while they were confirmed to have been briefly activated, the agency believes they switched off sooner than expected. In sport, with snow already falling in the Alps, get ready for one of the most exciting ski racing seasons in years, as some of the biggest names will be making a return to the slopes. Olympic gold medalists Lindsey Vonn, Axel Lund Svindal, Julia Mancuso, and possibly Bode Miller are all poised to make their comebacks from either injury or retirement. The circuit, which travels to 31 venues across 3 continents, begins in Solden, Austria this weekend, where conditions on the Rettenbach Glacier are perfect, according to International Ski Federation race director Markus Mayer. With the World Championships in St. Moritz next February and the Olympic Winter Games taking place in Pyeongchang, South Korea in February 2018, the 50th World Cup season will take on added significance. To health news. One of the most demonized patients in history, Gaitan Duga, has been convincingly cleared of claims he spread HIV to the US, says scientists. Mr. Dugas, a homosexual flight attendant, gained legendary status in the history of HIV/AIDS when he became known as Patient Zero. But a study in the journal Nature showed he was just one of thousands of infected people in the 1970s. It also showed New York was a crucial hub for the spread of the virus. AIDS only started to be recognized in 1981 when unusual symptoms started appearing in homosexual men. But researchers were able to look further back in time by analyzing stored blood samples, some of them containing HIV from hepatitis trials in the 1970s. The team at the University of Arizona developed a new method to reconstruct the genetic code of the virus in those patients. And after screening 2,000 samples from New York and San Francisco, the researchers were able to get 8 complete HIV genetic codes. That gave scientists the information they needed to build HIV's family tree and trace when it arrived in the US. Dr. Michael Warobay, one of the researchers, said, "The samples contain so much genetic diversity that they could not have originated in the late 1970s. We can place the most precise dates on the origins of the US epidemic at about 1970 or 1971. The researchers also analyzed the genetic code of human immunodeficiency virus taken from Mr. Dugas's blood. Like a failed paternity test, the results showed that the virus in his blood was not the father of the US epidemic." Dr. Richard McKay, a science historian at the University of Cambridge, said, "Gaitan Dugas is one of the most demonized patients in history and one of a long line of individuals and groups vilified in the belief that they somehow fueled epidemics with malicious intent. The Air Canada employee was labeled Patient Zero by the US Centers for Disease Control because he was a case out of California. Over time, the O became a zero and the term Patient Zero was born. It is still used to this day to describe the index case of an outbreak, as with Ebola in West Africa. Mr. Dugas died in 1984, but was identified as Patient Zero in the book, and the band played on. And that's all for CYC News. A reminder, you can watch this news bulletin again throughout the week on YouTube. I'm Angie Victor from the CYC studios in Sydney, Australia. Have a good night.